Open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no board or committee reports. Martha, no. Who else? No citizens concerned, no public hearings tonight. Town administrators report.
I just wanted to, I had made a list of the budget goals that we had spoken about since last year. As I developed this year's operating budget, I wanted to confirm those again with you, and if there's anything I've left out, let me know. Reinstating public safety funding to whatever level we're capable of. Reinstating human service funding, police department, facility, whether it's a combined facility or just housing for the police, we were going to look into that, which we are currently engaged in. Purchasing the fire department pumper, executing elementary school lease agreements, and creating a comprehensive road improvement program. Is there anything else that we have targeted for fiscal year 2015? Or if you think of anything else that you want included, just let me know as we continue on with the budget development. I also have the Byfield Community Arts lease agreement for execution this evening. It's the same document that we executed previously, it's just a 3-year lease.
Need a motion on this?
Yes.
All right, motion to approve?
Release. Second.
Any discussion on it, whatever?
I'd like to just quickly scan the lease.
Absolutely.
I know I should remember all the details.
Yeah,
but,
it's,
So we'll continue, they'll be responsible for the interior, we're responsible
Yep,
for the
nothing's
exterior,
changed.
right. I guess my only question is the duration of the lease, especially where that building's proving to be fairly expensive to maintain. Not that I want to stop the use that we have, but kind of looking ahead, I think we need to, like we have with other town properties, revisit that one. And, you know, a likely outcome would be we'll continue doing what we're doing right now, but I just think we should take a hard look at it again because of the expense of maintaining it.
one of the things that we've been talking about in particular is the replacement of the windows, and I believe the initial cost was somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000, and the Byfield Community Arts Group was going to pursue some grant funding, but they don't want to award grants unless they are going to be ensured that they're going to be utilizing the property
Right.
for that
But
particular
also,
purpose.
as you know, I have some experience in this area, and in my opinion, we shouldn't be replacing the windows. They don't need it. They need some TLC, as I would say, you know, some rejuvenation. Storm windows, you know, good storm windows on all the windows, and you'll get the same R value that you would get from a replacement window. And I tell everybody, I've got replacement windows in my house, circa 1810, and they're still holding up because the materials were so much better. You know, and the modern ones, they'll say 20-year guarantee, but that's for the glass, it's not for the plastic. Well, typically you're getting like a 10-year guarantee now, and, you know, we've had some other problems with, you know, new materials not holding up the way they should, like the roof on the library and so forth. So I just want to, both that particular thing, but just in general, kind of take another hard look at that building and decide how we, you know, if we're going to keep ownership, you know, what's the maintenance plan? How should we do it in a cost-effective way and still preserving the character of the building?
Right, and Sam Joslin, the building commissioner, did commission a study, and they gave us a report of all the repairs that are going to need to be done to the building over a period of, I think, 20 years. Sam's here, it was either 20 or 25 years. So we do have that
Right, yeah.
component done, so regardless of which direction we go for something like the windows, the point is that a lot of these granting agencies won't give the Byfield Community Arts 501c3 the funding if they're not guaranteed that they're going to be in that facility for a period of time.
Right.
So that's,
Right,
that was
that
the
we're
reason for the
responsible for
3
the
years.
exterior, not the
Right.
the community organization. That's why I'm,
Right.
and that's usually where your big expenses come in.
Definitely.
Right? So
Yep.
that's,
Yep.
so I guess I'll propose what is hopefully taken as a friendly amendment, and that is that we amend the lease for 1 year, just for now, to sort of take this hard look at it with the expectation that we'll come up with a reasonable plan and go forward, but intend it to be a friendly amendment. I don't want to kick them out, but at the same time, I think just because of our fiduciary responsibility as selectmen, I'd like to just spend some time and just take another hard look. You know, we have the report, but, you know, it's that kind of thing. So
I think the problem is, we're looking at the responsibility for the 1-year thing, but in order for them to get grants, they need a longer commitment to get the grants. And,
yeah, that's
You're
what I
right.
would understand. I mean, I've
yeah,
been in that kind of role before, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
yeah,
It depends on
This
the nature of
agreement's
the
for
grant.
3
Some of
years?
these grants
Yeah.
are only,
Okay.
I mean, some of these grants are very short-term projects,
Mhm.
often for just, in a case like this, you know, bringing in entertainment or,
Sure.
you know, sort of that type of thing. So that would be, certainly, with any lease, it's, if the two parties agree, it's always subject to revision. So
Sure.
if something comes up where the length of the lease becomes a real issue, I'd be happy to revisit it, because I think it's a good use for that building, and it's hard for me to think of other uses that would work out well and be cost effective, so that's where I'm coming from. So
Okay.
I've made proposed an amendment. Someone would have to second it if you folks don't agree with me. It's up to you.
When do we have to actually vote on the lease?
It expires June 30th.
June 30th.
Mhm.
Before we start to like maybe chop this up, would you like to have, I didn't get a chance to see this.
It's been in the Dropbox
I know it.
for
So, I think what David is, and I have full, you know, they've done a great job. But the building has become a little controversial. I think that's what David's speaking to. I think what David's speaking to is the length of the lease, to be honest, would make, certain ways of funding, it got controversial at last town meeting.
Through no fault of theirs.
No, but, I mean, I'm caught between the use of the building too. And I like the fact that the building is there, and I like the fact of the way it's being used now. I know there are a lot of people that talk to me about the fact that they don't wanna put a lot of money into the maintenance of the building. And certainly the people that are using the building now haven't got the ability to maybe address some of the needs that need to be addressed. And the length of the lease might allow that to be, addressed. I mean, I don't know. I'm caught on this one, on David's. I'm not gonna second David's, friendly amendment, cause right now I can't process it. But I'm gonna have trouble voting for the length of 3 years too, without understanding what the town's exposure is gonna be for repair on that building. What exposure does the town have to repair the building if we grant a 3-year lease? And that's what I'm trying to digest right now. I mean, do we have to bring it up to code? So, because that could get very expensive.
I believe it is up to code because it goes through an annual, it's not a certificate of occupancy, what is it for a commercial building? There's no,
It's the number of people that can be
yeah, but
inside the building.
it's not, it's the same thing as a certificate of occupancy, but it's a different name.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that goes through an annual inspection, okay? So,
We have time, you can certainly take it under advisement at this point.
I would be
in time.
comfortable with just, if you folks want more time, and I think all of us need more time, we could just
Sure.
table it, and we've got, as you point out, we've got some time to
So
discuss this.
what is it you're looking for? Do you want a list of everything that's wrong with the building that needs to be fixed?
No, I,
We have that.
we have that
We've already
already.
got that.
Right, I was
What I'm
gonna say,
looking
so
for, Chuck,
where you
is-
going with this? I'm confused here.
Okay, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. Where I was really, the point I was trying to make is that whether we want to keep this in town ownership in the long term because, you know, of the expense, you know, that we're spending a lot more on that building than we're getting in return, or will be spending a lot more, probably already have, in recent years. And so, you know, I hear from people who are concerned about that sort of thing. I mean, as a Byfielder myself, and, you know, that was used as part of the school at one time. Both of my kids went to school there, so I have, you know, my own attachments to that building and certainly would like to see it used. And how many other places do we have in town other than our schools that have a nice little stage and things like that? It's kind of a neat building for the type of use that's currently going on. So I'm not concerned about the current use. I'm just expressing in some ways concerns that people have brought to me, and I thought they were valid, that, you know, there is a long-term, I hate to use the word liability because that has such a negative connotation, but just, there is some
So
significance.
what are we gonna gain by delaying this? What are you gonna propose to us at the next meeting?
Well, again,
Go ahead, Dave.
that would be up to sort of Jeff, because I made you know, proposed an amendment which hasn't been seconded, but it's already engendering a broader discussion of how to move forward with this lease. So I think maybe Jeff can express more of, since he was the one who essentially brought up the idea of maybe just delaying the decision a while to see if we can, I think you put it, get our minds around the lease and so forth.
Well, the only thing is that we have to decide right now, and I have to decide, you know, if you go to the number 7 where it's under repairs and extraordinary expenses, and the landlord shall, you know, make all repairs, replacements to roof, foundation, exterior and structural portions of the premise and to adjoining sidewalks, curbs, plumbing, and common areas that are necessary to maintain the premise in a safe, tenable condition, in good order and repair. Tenants shall be responsible for repairs to the interior. So, you know, that being said, after we had such a hard time even getting the roof fixed because of available funds, I guess I hadn't really thought about how we were gonna fund those repairs. And that leaves me where I am right now. And if someone maybe from, you know, maybe Chuck, because you were speaking, I mean, where are we gonna get the money to fund these repairs? Or Joe?
you'd have to get it at town meeting, so everyone would have to vote on it.
Yes.
We can't
and
spend any money that's not
There
appropriate
is-
at town meeting.
I mean, there is money in the land sales. We could fool with that. I mean, if we can afford a brand-new fire truck, we can afford to fix the
Well, I
building, you
mean,
know?
Come to, it's, you know, having to go through town meeting, I didn't think about that. So those repair requests would have to go before town meeting?
They'd be considered by the capital planning committee. A
Yep.
recommendation would be made to the Board of Selectmen, and then it would go to town meeting for approval.
What's it?
But the group is willing to partner with us and to try and, you know, find grant funding to help defer some of the costs.
I mean, to me, what makes this a little awkward is that, according to the lease, we're obligated to do these things. But then, as you point out, we've got to go to town meeting to get the funds to meet our obligation. So it's you know, it's a little,
All of our contracts are
I know,
subject to
it's a bit
appropriation
awkward,
of-
and I think,
yeah.
you know, I mean, for me, past history with that building is past history. We can't change the past, but I'm looking forward. And I know some of the controversy at town meeting has to do with past history and not the present or the future, but it is a significant expense. And say, I'm very supportive of preserving the building. I think the current use is appropriate, but as I said, you know, because of our fiscal responsibilities as a Board of Selectmen, I would just like to, at the very least, spend a little more time, you know, making it clear, certainly with the cable and so forth, it'll become more clear to the community and through the newspaper that, you know, this lease is up for renewal, and it would also give us a chance to hear from some of the people who've talked to me privately, if they so choose, just so the whole board can kind of get a feel for where the community is at. I mean, I think most of the folks in Byfield are probably be pretty supportive, but we may, you know, other parts of town might not be so supportive, and we've had this with other regional issues in town, so that's sort of where I'm coming from.
All right, maybe
I hope
by
I made myself clear.
next meeting?
I mean, even before we go there, maybe we can talk about how we can get around the fact that, first of all, if, out of all fairness to everyone involved in trying to chart a path, if we go to town meeting with repairs on the building and town meeting chooses to vote not to have the money to repair those, where does a lease like this go then?
It's all
The
subject
lease
to
would stay the same.
appropriation.
Not if the repairs mean the building cannot be, you know, if the repairs have that type of consequence that the building would have to be, you know, closed to inhabitants, and yet we can't use the taxpayers' money to fix it. It's, you know,
I think we've been down that route before with some of our facilities. If we
Yeah.
don't do our maintenance and repairs, we know
Highway
what
bond.
happens to them.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
So,
But Chuck, to answer your question to me, this does not have to be resolved this month even, right? And so I don't think putting it off one meeting would be sufficient to sort of
Right.
think this through. So, you know, if you want, you know, we could put it in the agenda, say a month from now or something like that. It would still be plenty of time to resolve any final issues with the lease, and it would give both the community to provide whatever input they choose to us as a board, and also for us to take another
Well,
hard look at things, so.
if you go down the path you're going to sell the building, you're gonna have
I
to
didn't
bring
say
the
that
thing
was
up to,
my path. I'm just saying that's an option.
I'm really confused then.
Well, I mean, I'm
What do
talking
we
about
do with it
me-
if we're
me
not?
as an individual, you know, when I go to town meeting, I'm only one vote, right? And so, you know, I have
Mhm.
voted in the past for maintenance in that building and would expect that I would do so in the future. But at town meeting, I'm only one vote. And so even though I have my personal preferences, I also have to think about
Mhm.
what I'm hearing from the larger community, because that's obviously, you know, our role as selectmen. And so that's why I'm at this place where I'm at. We're kind of between a rock and a hard place in some ways, between what the lease says is our legal obligation and what state law says is the process by which, you know, money gets appropriated. So, as I say, at the very least, it's awkward, and then not everybody agrees that we should continue to, and I personally would like us to continue doing that. So it's me, Dave, as a voter at town meeting versus me, Dave, as a selectman, trying to at least talk out these issues before we make a final decision on the lease. That's where I'm coming from.
I guess it's not even that for me, Dave, too. What I became confused on is when I sat at the capital planning committee meeting, the list of repairs seemed to be extraordinary on the building. I remember, Doug, it was at 140 grand?
Honestly, don't know.
And I didn't think most of those repairs were probably ultimately necessary for performing the function that it functions. So my confusion probably falls to, to what is a real good checklist of what needs to be repaired and what can be repaired so the building can function as it needs to function and support the tenants. And that's where my confusion is. If you don't have the lease, do you? I wish I had studied the lease a little more, even though it is the old one, I'm trying to remember it. Tracy, when you looked at the lease, number 14 is the landlord's right to sell. What in that codicil, can you remember it? Because when you probably read it deeper than I, did you see, what is the, if town meeting or the landlord decides to sell that building, what is our obligation to the tenant under 14?
There's
Can you remember, right?
certain amount of days' notice, I don't recall.
So, but there's no damages.
No, it would still have to go through a procurement process, so there'd be plenty of time for notifications.
And there was no, David, this part here, take a look at it. So there's no, I mean, the lease, if you think of the lease as that being the lease, and you think of town meeting as being the door that closes or opens, and I don't mean the building being sold, Chuck,
Mm-hmm.
but if we can't, find the money to fix the building, and those repairs happen to be extraordinary, then you would probably have to close the building anyway. So, I mean, if you look at that, you could execute a 3-year lease, Dave, and not injure anyone, basically because you still have the right to do what you have to do with the building.
I must say, this legalese requires, even though I'm used to reading legalese, this is a little more convoluted than most.
I mean, on my buildings,
So-
for instance, with my lease, if I terminate a lease, I have
Not a
some
lawyer.
damages, but it doesn't seem, as I read this, there's any damages if the lease is terminated, right?
Right,
then I'm okay
again,
with-
from the town perspective, obviously, the tenants may not be happy, but.
No,
Right.
then I'm okay with 3 years.
I can resend you the list of repairs, as,
As long as we still have the ability to basically execute the lease, meaning kill it, I'm okay with that.
Tracy, I was
Okay,
just
then.
looking through Dropbox, and I do not see this document. I don't know where to look, maybe, but.
it's the original document, I'd have to go back in mine to pull the date for you. It's the exact same
Because I just went
document.
through there, and I don't see anything that makes me think that it's in Dropbox.
It's there, I went through it with Susan today.
Well, again,
I'll
this
make
is a whole
sure.
nother discussion, but.
Okay,
I mean,
You notice that I'm the only one who brought his iPad tonight. and
Yes, I
think
do.
it's that we need to do a little work to get this whole thing, Dropbox and whatever, sort of.
to be honest with you, we could vote to table this. After reading 14, I would probably vote the same way now, because I think the use of the building is a consistent use. I think to allow a 3-year lease would allow people to do what the group has said they would do, which is to go out and be able to fund the repairs that might be needed. And once again, thinking about what would have to be done when we go to get those repairs done, if we need to do those repairs, and the fact that we can terminate the lease without any extenuating circumstances, I can go along with the first motion.
Okay.
Well, there's no second on my
No.
amendment, so you folks, are free to
All right.
vote your conscience on this one.
All in favor of executing the lease? And is there any other statements? I think we got yours through the amendment, that your concerns, and whatever. So all in favor of executing the lease?
All
Fine.
I'll
Opposed?
abstain.
Abstain? Okay.
You're an aye.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a tiebreaker.
That was easy.
There was no tie to break. So, anyway, all right, done.
okay, all right. Also wanted to bring your attention, the fire company lease agreements. I didn't know if anyone had any comments on those. Those also, can you see that in your box, David?
Uh,
We're already out of it.
Well, it's.
I just wanted to confirm that it's in there.
I've got to set that so it doesn't
Okay,
sort of time out on me, because these are the ones that are from back in December.
probably, yeah. I'll work with Susan tomorrow to see if we can resolve.
Yeah, actually,
that issue,
I've
but-
got someone from the media committee who's volunteered to help out with
Great.
this sort of thing.
Okay,
He's pretty experienced in that area, so I'll mention that afterwards.
This is my
Okay.
fault. I wasn't,
And also I put the changes to the proposed changes to the Town Administrator Act are in there, and those would include the appointment of fish commissioners to resolve the ethics issues that had arisen, as well as appointment of town clerk. And is there anything else?
Tracy, were we talking now about the documents for tonight's meeting, or what you said
I
in
just
there?
wanna bring it to your attention,
Yeah.
so the way I've been doing it is I've been putting them in your Dropbox, bringing your attention to them at the meeting, and then following up with an email to let you know they're in there, so for a subsequent discussion, just so that you'll have an opportunity to review it
Right.
before we have it on the agenda. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just a procedural thing, it's kind of hard when this stuff goes in the Dropbox the day before the meeting, because often I just don't have time to look at it before the meeting.
Right, that one went in, bring it to your attention tonight, and it'll appear on an agenda probably in March,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Okay.
The only other issue that I have is there was a conversation about plowing of private ways, and I didn't know if you wanted to follow up. I had an opportunity to speak with the DPW director about it. We identified those private ways which were currently being plowed by the town. I had an opportunity to speak with town council about it. There is an acceptance of a section of general law that through a ballot initiative will allow you to to spend public funds on plowing private ways. However, the Board of Selectmen have to identify those private ways, and you have to make an appropriation at town meeting. Different conversations that I've had with different people, and I think I've come to the same conclusion, it really isn't a good practice. It would be my recommendation to the board that you discontinue plowing private ways and make some type of a notification for those, I believe there are 4 roadways. Make a notification to them that in the next season, that, you know, the town would no longer be doing that, but that's up
If
to
my
you.
memory serves me correct, we voted as a board to stop that a year or two ago. So I was surprised to learn that that still was happening. But anyway, at least we now know what the proper procedure would be going forward.
Correct.
Should we choose to
Do
go
you
that
want to
way.
affirm that vote this evening and we discontinue plowing private ways?
I move that we discontinue plowing private ways.
Second, okay. Any other discussion on it, questions?
is there anyone?
Yeah, I'm really, really concerned about the ambulance and the fire vehicles being able to get down there. There's more than 3 or 4 houses there, and I'm deeply concerned with it. I did it myself for many, many years, and,
Tracy,
you know, for that very, very reason. So that's my
Aren't the
opposition
owners
to
of
this.
Private ways obligated?
Responsible for doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we should have some mechanism that if we learn that a private way is not being plowed, or that somehow they could be notified of their legal responsibility.
I can ask council to help me draft the letter as we make the notification for next season.
Mhm.
What did council say, Trace?
She said it is allowed under, you know, a ballot initiative, a designation by the selectmen of certain roads, and an appropriation at town meeting.
Wow.
But it's not a recommended practice.
Right.
So,
The
and quite frankly,
problem
we
is,
don't have,
what happens if you've got a long driveway with 1 or 2 houses on it? Where do you draw the line? With 1 house on it, okay? Is that different than it's a private way with 6 houses?
Well,
I
there's
think
a-
that's the
There's
problem.
a difference, legally, there's a difference between a common driveway and a private way, but anyone who has served on the planning board for any length of time knows that this can be a very hard distinction to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And we have a number of situations still outstanding in town, I think, that where the status is somewhat unclear, and the folks that use that way or driveway, whatever it is, would like it to be considered a private way as opposed to a common driveway. And having served on the planning board for a few years, we've had some pretty wild ones trying to resolve that stuff and going back and
Oh,
forth.
that's right.
So,
I think too, I take what Chuck said with, it's credible what Chuck says. But I think it goes beyond that too. If we think about plowing private ways, if we start to damage the private ways, I mean, where does our responsibility start and where does it end?
Yep, I see the fear.
So,
I hope you see mine.
well, Chuck, I think the difficulty is that, with our newer subdivisions, it's very clear that this is a private way or private road in the legal sense as opposed to a common driveway. And they have homeowners associations that are, through their dues, paid for maintenance, plowing, whatever. And what gets hard are some of these other ones where some individual owns the actual road, if you will, or driveway, whatever it might be. And there's no formal mechanism for the folks that also have homes on that, we'll call it a private way, to pay for, the snow removal. And of course, everybody wants a free lunch in this world, so, I imagine if the word gets out that we're, in fact, still plowing some private ways, that there could be other folks coming out that we haven't even thought about that might also like to have that service for free, so.
Steve, you got a comment? Microphone, yeah, please.
Steve Fram, 21 Forest Street, Chairman of the Newbury Board of Health. I see both sides of the issue. It's a public health issue, it's a public safety issue, and it's a taxpayer issue. You might solve both of these, at least for this year, by sending a letter out immediately, giving them 60 days' notice. That'll get it through the winter and give everybody time to act or react to what may or may not happen at town meeting.
Good point. Makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
All right.
David, Paul.
Someone's raising their hand. David.
David Powell, 148 Orchard Street, and the planning board. Not speaking for the planning board, but as a member backing up what David was saying, one of the things you have to realize is that there is a great difference between common driveways, private ways, and easements. And the difference essentially comes down to where the frontage for the property comes from, okay? And so we have in the town, and this has come up a number of times recently in the planning board, a number of roads which were given names which were accepted by the town as names, but were never accepted by the town as public ways. And therefore they are the private responsibility of those people for whom those serve as a way into their homes. And one of the things that I think you're not considering is that one of the parts of an insurance policy on a house has to do with the access. And if you don't maintain access to that house for emergency vehicles in a proper manner as described by your insurance policy, then it becomes void, essentially. And so one of the things I think we need to look at is the fact that indeed I would second Steve's suggestion, because that would put on notice the fact that people really do have to work together in small groups. They would be best advised to, in fact, form a homeowners association so that they can negotiate and have a contract to have their road plowed. And this has all come up simply because it's been very sloppy, like a whole bunch of other things in Newbury at times. And I think we need to understand that there are very distinct differences. And so we don't need to waffle around. It's perfectly possible to set out the exact legal situation of any lot as it relates to its access. Okay?
After hearing what Steve said and Dave said, Tracy, we're plowing these roads now?
Yes.
Absolutely. You could not stop plowing in the middle of winter.
No, what I suggested was notifications and that it would stop for next season.
That sounds good.
So Tracy, which
Okay.
ones are we plowing?
The list to date that I had received from the DPW director included Riverfront, a private way off of Marsh Ave, Myers Lane with a question mark. We have in the past, but not consistently. Spring Hill Court. Those are the ones that we've identified to date. I don't know that that's a complete list.
I mean, just to follow up on what David Powell said, is that the reason why we have common driveways with names was really for E911 purposes, to make it easier for our first responders to find the place, because often the frontage is nowhere near the common driveway that serves the house. And as a resident of Larkin Road, I can show you a number of interesting examples there.
Sure.
And so and just the fact that a driveway, whatever you want to call it, has a name doesn't mean that it's a public way.
Right.
Or a private way in the,
So I'll
Legal sense.
finalize the list and
Yeah.
I'll run it through
and I certainly
planning and-
support the, sort of the end of the season, which probably won't be that different from 60 days anyway. So.
Right, right.
All right.
And this will just reaffirm what we voted on a year ago. We'll
Right.
send out
That we'll-
letters this time.
we'll be a
Yeah.
little more formal about it, yeah, good.
All right, so, want to make a motion to,
Well, it's been moved and seconded already by me and Jeff, so the motion to cease, but I guess this is the amendment.
That's right.
but
there
to
is-
send a letter, yeah.
Well, the motion should be to cease at the end of this plowing
Okay.
season.
And I should think you would send a letter too.
All right, so you
Yeah.
want to,
Send a letter to the
do you want to
houses.
rephase it so that,
I make a motion that we, at
Well,
the,
so we have a motion, so I
Yes,
guess.
there's a motion on the table.
The amendment, really, to the motion, unless we wanted,
I will amend the motion at the table to include the fact that we send a letter to the folks that are living on the private ways and tell them that by next year, they have to formulate a different plan because we will not be plowing their road.
Okay. I will second the amendment.
second it?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Okay. Now, on the motion as amended,
Yes.
all in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay. 3 ayes, okay. And-
Tough meeting so far, boys.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
we didn't even get to the 7
Thank you.
o'clock agenda item yet.
yeah, okay. Have you got anything else?
No.
Ben, finally, thank you for your patience.
First off, I want to say thank you for having me here tonight and responding to the letter that we sent you in December. It's nice to be back. As we said in the letter, we just want to continue our discussions about improving fish passage at Larkin Mill Dam on Larkin Road. In the past year, I did state in the letter, but we did make significant improvements to passage upstream and downstream of Larkin Road. At River Street, we re-poured some of the weirs on a small fishway. We took off and readjusted the very obvious aluminum steep pass that everybody probably drives by on Main Street and knows well. Over 2 years, we noticed that that had been incorrectly placed when it was first installed, so we took that apart, cleaned everything out, moved a bunch of heavy rocks, and made it so that fish that reached there could actually use that fishway, because we determined it probably wasn't able to pass fish previously, especially in low water. And then really most significantly, people were probably a little bit inconvenienced by the work we did at Central Street, where we replaced the 2 culverts underneath the 2 weirs underneath the culvert that had blown out in the Mother's Day flood, and it only worsened. So we did pour an entire new floor in between the 2 culverts and strengthen both culverts. And also, in response to noticing that a lot of fish bypass the entrance to that ladder, we poured 2 small forms so that we could board it off the way once they come into right by the entrance and go to the dam. Instead of going up the ladder, we made it so we can hopefully direct more fish up the ladder rather than going and aggregating at the base of the dam. So we have put a lot of time and effort and money into improving fish passage on the river. As we said last year, we're going to sort of run into a situation where Larkin became more of a blockage to passage than any other dam on the system, and we're quickly approaching that. After our meeting last year, I did go out with Doug to visit the fishway and kind of point out our concerns about the degraded status of the fishway, including what attraction flows would look like at the entrance, significant damage from roots from all the trees on both the island and the island upstream and downstream of the river, and where the roots are coming through and breaking apart the fishway. There's a lot of broken weirs. It's a large fishway. It's 140 feet long. So between all of the issues we're looking at, we really do think that it's becoming more urgent to address passage at this location. We're very dedicated to seeing restoration of the Parker River. We're putting a lot of effort into not only these the kind of active rebuilding of fishways, but also studying the biological characteristics of the herring in the river. So we would like to kind of come back to you guys. I know we identified a few issues with potentially doing anything at the site last year, and first off, see if you had made any progress towards resolving some of the data needs for those issues.
No.
No.
Yeah.
That was somewhat expected.
Okay, that's the first time it's come up from discussion since last.
Okay, that's good. So we're at a situation where, same as last year, given the results of the feasibility analysis that the town at town meeting voted to approve and undergo, where dam removal would seem to be the most feasible and economical, at either partial or full response from the town, and it would also eliminate any liability from eventual dam failure. It's from a passage standpoint what we would like to see happen, but we do urge that something be done one way or another. Are you guys up for discussing tonight some of the possibilities with
Absolutely.
going further with that feasibility analysis?
Could I ask sort of one question before we get into discussion? That is that I know that some very nice instrumentation was put at some of these fish passages, and I'm just wondering what you learned in general, and more specifically, what have you learned that would be relevant to the discussion tonight?
Absolutely, I have no problem talking about that, and I'll take the opportunity to say that I'll be speaking on the 23rd at the Parker River Clean Water Association annual meeting, where I'll have more formal presentations of everything with slides to kind of illustrate our results. So that's another opportunity for people who are interested to see that. We did several studies, 3 separate studies on the Parker River this past migration season. The first was a fishway efficiency study on the Central Street Dam, or Central Street, the fishway at Mullen Mills Dam, our Central Street. So people who had driven by and seen the white PVC rectangles in the fishway, that's what that was. And what those are basically antennas, and much like you have a speed pass and you go through an antenna or a reader when you're going over the Tobin Bridge, we put very small, we would catch river herring, put 23 millimeters, so about this size, RFID tags in the fish, in the body cavity of the fish, make a very small incision, place that tag inside the body cavity, and then release it back into the river. And so when a fish that was tagged went through one of these antennas, we had a reader and a computer that would read that it went through, and it would be, so it would say this ID tag, which we could link to a fish, went through at this time. And we tagged 400, and so we had an antenna at the entrance, so downstream at the fishway. We had one after the first series of 7 pools, which are steeper, and they had that turn to them. And so we were curious about, okay, how did the fish initially handle this challenge, this vertical challenge? And then we had another antenna at the exit of the fishway, and we had a very large antenna that went over the spillway, which is probably the most obvious. It's because we wanted to know how long fish that did ascend the fishway then spent in the system. So we could, that way, we get them going down the fishway again or going over the spillway, and we know how long they've been in fresh water to spawn. We tagged 428 fish. We had about 100 enter the fishway, so go right into that first bottom pool. We had, I think 33 go up past the corner. We had 15 make it all the way to the top, but 5 of those actually dropped right back out. So we only had 10 out of 428 fish we tagged make it up the entire fishway, which clearly says that there's a passage problem at Central Street, which is, we hope that will be alleviated by both replacing these culverts finally, or repairing the culverts, and then also I installed those board slots so that we can hopefully get more fish attuned to going up the fishway rather than going and aggregating at the base. We had one fish that went straight up the fishway, spent 20 minutes in the head pond, and then came back down. And then tried to go back up the fishway about an hour later. So that's seriously, that was one project we did, and we will continue that this year. We'll be tagging hopefully another 450, 500 fish. Of the fish that did make it up, we did not record a single fish at Larkin. I was on the river pretty much every day during migration season, and only on I think it was 5 consecutive days I saw a small group of about 5 to 8 fish that were holding below the fish. We were at the entrance of the fishway, but I never saw any fish in the fishway or above in the impoundment behind Larkin. So there's several issues there that we need to try to get a better hold on. The second study was we installed an electronic fish counter at the top of the fishway, and that was a series of larger PVC tubes in a wooden array.
Which dam are you talking about?
I'm talking about Central Street here, sorry. And so that was to help work with the volunteer count and get a higher accuracy count of all the fish, and then also look at if there's daytime passage, nighttime passage, and all of this. There's a lot of science, guys, so if you want me to just go very quickly, I will. Yes.
But again, we're more worried about the Larkin Dam right now.
Yeah, so Larkin Dam, the studies didn't have as much to do with Larkin Dam. We did have the pit tag antennas at Larkin, and we detected one lamprey.
They didn't make it.
They didn't make it up there, but we didn't get a lot of fish up Central Street to know. But those would be the only ones that pertained specifically to Larkin.
We used to get a lot of fish up there.
We used to get a
How
lot
long
of fish
ago?
up there. I think we could probably lengthen this discussion quite a bit if we started discussing potential reasons why there aren't a lot of fish up there now.
Will that be part of your discussion at the Park River Clean Water?
Yes, it will.
Okay, so people that are interested, that'd be a good venue.
Yes, absolutely.
And was, with your work on the river, which is significant, did Marine Fisheries participate in some of the costs at Central Street Dam?
Absolutely. I mean, beyond manpower and materials for all the improvements we made at all the other fishways, we provided some match that then went to a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant that paid for the entire culvert repair.
Because, I mean,
Weir repair.
I would easily make a motion tonight. I know that we can have our highway departments make sure we clear all the trees that are acting as impediments, and we get down there and clean things up. And at least I feel significantly comfortable to make a motion that we'd enter into anything you guys wanted to do to our fish ladder.
Yeah. There,
I mean, the same thing that was done to the other fish ladders, are the engineering and the work, and we can provide probably some help. I think Governor Dummer was thinking about helping a little bit.
They volunteered in the past.
So, I mean, it would only make sense that we continue, especially when it's kind of exploratory and the studies are expanding, that we participate as a town, and we'd love to have your help, and we'll clean things up and provide some manpower, and if that grant would be available again, and we'd really like that.
yeah, so there's that kind of breaks it into several lines that we could go down. Before we start talking about grants being available and everything else, what I would say is, as I mentioned earlier, we've spent more and more time on the fishway at Larkin. It's a very large fishway, and in our estimation, at this point, the amount of repairs that need to be done to make it worth doing are very significant, and it's really either very much at or beyond the limits of what we typically do, and we'd have to do so much work. We would want to get engineering plans on that, And that's something we can discuss, but it's part of that whole matrix of inputs that makes us feel like we want to talk a little bit more about the potential of breaching the dam partially, or doing some, exploring all these options for dam removal before we go to this, because it's not going to be an insignificant effort to fix that fishway, especially when we don't know how it performs. Because we could put a lot of money to fixing it, and it could perform as badly as Central Street's performing right now, and then that's not really a smart cost. Whereas we know if we remove the dam and we can find you money to help you with that, then fish are going to get up. If that makes sense, Jeff?
You know, it's all in the politics and the sell. I mean, we don't know, we've spent a lot of money, a lot of time on Central Street Dam, and we don't know if that's gonna work. So to try to use that as a parallel to push the town or invite the town to take that dam out, that probably isn't a direct, the line gets wavy. I mean, I know I've got my own feelings on the dam, but, I mean, you would have a stronger case if there was a way probably to at least fix for some reason, I mean, some way to be able to fix the fish ladders till we started to see some significant results, scientific study, that impediment was the one that was creating, you know, the whole problem with the fish run in the Parker River, and it was not all the other impediments to fish in the river that seem to exist in a whole lot of other ways also.
Yeah, I think for me, the real difference between the two situations, or perhaps for the division, and why we are suggesting dam removal here, is that there's a full feasibility analysis and you have a failing dam, which isn't the case at Central Street. So that's what prompts us, because there's this feasibility analysis and there's an opportunity, and Eric is probably best to talk about this because he has far more experience in restoration in this area than I do. But you have a full feasibility analysis recommending dam removal. While the climate, I don't think, is quite as good as when this analysis was first done, there are still significant opportunities out here, and maybe Eric can speak a little bit more to that.
Just for clarification, because we keep talking about Fishway, but as you're starting to point out, we've got to deal with the whole dam. That's what makes it so expensive, because we could fix the Fishway, the dam is failing, and pretty soon there'll be no water coming down the Fishway. So that's where we're really stuck right
Yeah, I
now,
mean,
is that
yeah.
And before Eric starts, Ben, what it is there's a political reality that enters into, I mean, you're acting with good instincts. I mean, you can sense, you've been on the river, you're thinking, I can see that's a problem. But that doesn't mean that other people have the wisdom of being on the river to see. You know, there's a whole section of our community that feel that probably cutting some trees and fixing the fish dam, like what was done at the other dams in the river, would be enough. That being said, that's a perception.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to discuss with anybody about the perception. I think, you know, there's also a lot of people who probably would like to see the dam go down, and there were public comments in favor of it when the feasibility report was drafted. So, and they went out to public comment. So I think you're absolutely right. This is a political question for the town. I'm just here representing the division. I'll come back at another point as a private citizen of the town. But tonight I'm here as a member of the Division of Marine Fisheries. But yes, politically, this is a decision for the town, and I'm just trying to provide the information and the perspective of marine fisheries. But I'll let Eric.
Yeah, Eric Hutchins, National Marine Fisheries Service in Gloucester, actually dug out the feasibility report, and it may be helpful for the town to take a peek at this again. We worked with the town of Newbury, in particular with Doug, on a competitive selection of a consultant for this. So this was not a hand-picked, it was a competitive solicitation, and an independent engineer created this document. It's yours, it's actually not mine, it's your work. We provided the funds to the town. One real key thing here is that this is an engineering report that clearly states to meet any dam safety standards, you'd have to rebuild this dam. So, for all practical purposes, no funding agency will rebuild your dam, but you have a dam that's failing. It's actually in failure mode as we speak. It's leaking, and every year it'll continue to get worse. So as I brought up 2 years ago, it's inevitable that your dam is going. And what the decision at some point the town needs to make is, do you want to rebuild your dam? And there's estimates of costing, which have certainly changed. Or fix the fish ladder, but to fix the fish ladder, you have to rebuild the dam. So there may be funds out there at some point to help with the fish ladder, but no agency is funding dam repairs to the nature that this needs, because the whole engineering study, this isn't a political document, it's an engineering document, that to fix the fish ladder, you need to remove the dam completely and rebuild it to meet modern dam safety standards. It's in failure mode. So that's the real key issue. This issue's not gonna go away, it's just gonna get worse. And one of the issues our agency, as well as many of the public have, is if it goes a little bit further, then there will be no passage whatsoever under any circumstances. And the time it would take for a town or agency or anyone else to mobilize to take this to the next step, is a couple of years. And a couple of years of absolutely no passage whatsoever is enough to write off this fish run, because none of them are making it into the spawning habitat. We're probably close to that verge now. This run, the bottom certainly dropped out a number of years ago. So that's the real key issue. It's beyond repair. This isn't a repairable dam. The fish ladder, as many have seen, is literally crumbling. All the bits and pieces have fallen in. There's water leaking through all. You can't, this isn't a mortar patch situation. So that's the real key issue. You either need a new dam or to get rid of the dam in the long term. And the issues that were brought up from a water quality perspective that I brought up before are actually pretty much well addressed in here. The stormwater discharge from Route 95 actually discharges below your intake from your water supply. So I've yet to come up with a rationale, and I'm working on about 50 of these right now in New England. I'll be honest with you, of all the projects I'm working on, when I stepped into this, and I still say it to this day, I can't see a reason for keeping this dam compared to almost any I'm working on at the municipal level. Our agency isn't leading these, we're working with towns. So we really have a situation that's failing, and we can't get fish over it, we can't fix it. And there won't be funding, and I'm working with all the funding agencies. You have probably one of the highest priority projects that I know of. I wrote a letter of support for this Great Marsh Initiative, which I know Newbury, my guess is the Board of Selectmen wrote a letter of support. This project is probably more important to the health of the Great Marsh, getting fish out there, for anyone that commercially or recreationally fishes, or just cares about the environment, than many of those projects in that grant proposal for $3 million. Getting fish back into this environment is truly important for the whole east coast of the United States. These are forage fish, marine mammals, commercial and recreational fisheries, and we're losing them. And this river's dying because they can't get to the spawning habitat. And it is truly important to get those fish into their spawning habitat. They can't spawn in salt water.
What's the difference now versus 20 years ago when we had a big, healthy migration of fish up through the ladder? What's the difference now?
Probably a few things, and Ben can chime in on this as well. There are certainly some unknowns going on with river herring. Climate change is one of them. The other is these fish ladders compared to 20 years ago, most of these fish ladders in the Parker River, I think, were built in the 1930s. They were patched together. They are truly crumbling. I used to go to the next one up, in Byfield, the snuff mill,
Yeah.
and literally lift rocks that had completely fallen apart to keep that on a daily basis so fish could make it up. They're just falling apart. They're junk at this point. Concrete only has so much lifespan. It's basically gone. That's a big part of it. But river herring are doing bad on the whole East Coast, but there's a little resurgency in the past couple of years. And I mean small, at least it's in the right direction.
So how many dams on the river?
There's six.
Five.
How many beaver dam?
What?
Plenty of beaver dams.
How many?
Oh boy. Okay, let me think. I can get here. Well, there's the one below Larkin, which we did pop open before the season started. There's one sometimes at the USGS gauge. There's one sometimes between Snuff Mill and Main Street.
Yep.
There is 3 between River Street and Crane Pond.
Yep.
there's two that are in the channel between Crane Pond and Thurlow, but those are mostly managed to disappear. And then there's one whopping one in the old quarry property between Thurlow and Georgetown.
Okay.
And so I see your point, Chuck, and I think that Eric.
That's my question, is how do the fish handle the beaver dam? Because since the trapping law was taken away, now we have a lot more beaver than we have, and I mean, is that more of a problem than our dam here is? You know, I'm kind of,
And I can, let me answer that, because I
Sure.
actually worked on your river deal with the beavers as well as Ben. And this question comes up on a lot of projects. All of these fish ladders in New England, for all practical purposes, were built mostly in the 30s, 20s and 30s. Beavers were exterminated at that point. Fish ladders did okay when they were kept up to, with maintenance, and there were no beavers. There is no person in this room, and actually many people in this room have dealt with the beavers. They can clog up, when you have two pieces of concrete to an entrance to a fish ladder, nature doesn't create orifices like that anywhere other than maybe some rocky channels out west. A beaver can clog that up in about an hour flat, perfectly seal it up. And I've actually gone there many days with people in this room to the dams and pulled everything out of there, unbelievable, 100% blocked up the next day. Nature doesn't create orifices that are iron fortified with perfect faces like this that a little 18-inch piece of stick can go between. River herring and beavers co-evolved. Dams come, dams go. There's always, when the water level goes up, there's always a little spill over here. It is absolutely an impediment, but the water still makes it through or over a beaver dam. Sometimes they'll block up passage completely, but often the water goes up, you get a little rain event, the fish are all ready to go for it. If the beavers clog up a fish ladder, which many in this room know, do it every single night, literally every night, and then you have a 3-inch rain event, the 3-inch rain event will not unblock a fish ladder blocked with a beaver dam. The water will go the alternate direction, which the fish can't make it up. So they co-evolved for thousands of, well, about 10,000 years up here in this part of the country. So there's a very big difference between a beaver dam and a natural dam, because a beaver can clog it up literally 1 hour, not even overnight.
so they can do that to Central Street, Main Street also? So all of those dams gotta go?
No, but it's cumulative is the issue. All of them are bad. You're
Yeah.
absolutely on target, but you have one that's failing. Central Street, we're not here to say, you're right now that's being band-aided together enough. Some of the others are. But this one, no one's taken care of. There's a legal responsibility which is not being taken care of. It's just not being done and it's falling apart. The other ones, you know, there's thousands of dams. People are maintaining them in some form or the other. There's no agency that's saying blow up all the dams, remove them all. It's agencies are looking for dams that no one's A, taking care of, and B, are doing bad things. That's what this one's doing. No one wants, I mean, for all practical purposes, it doesn't have a function.
Yeah. There are some serious concerns about what might be in the river behind the dam.
We
If you
took
tear it down,
Samples.
we have been, discussions with that, and I'm not real sure where we're gonna go with that.
There was good testing done through certified laboratories, and that was evaluated with state folks, and, I mean, you know, certainly that's serious questions to be asked.
Yeah, that was the water department's issue, and then the fire department had a, pretty good ask on keeping it there, because that's a great place to put a dam up if they get
Put a boom up.
boom up, if there is a major spill on the highway. Now, what do you think? No? Yeah?
Well, we actually proposed an alternative to that, which was actually your new Larkin Road Bridge is an impeccably better place if you had, because you have a perfect orifice opening of a brand new dam, brand new bridge built in what's the date on that, 2003 or something?
Yeah, pretty close, yeah, you're right.
Pretty new, so you've got, that way the trucks can actually get to that instantaneously in a watertight orifice versus a dam that's 100 feet long. If you had a big rain event, you can't, you know, so we addressed that.
In either of these issues, I think that the important thing to also keep in mind is that, as Eric pointed out before, you can either act now when you can have help, or you can act later when the dam fails. Politically, it's probably not gonna matter to the selectmen now. But you can act later when the dam fails, and you won't be able to find the type of aid that you could probably get now financially to have the problem taken care of. So I think that's one.
If the dam fails, it's been surmised that that failure won't be that much of a failure that will have to be addressed at any extent of what the dam removal would be. But
But the issue regarding mobilization of sediments that testing shows that to be not harmfully contaminated, but you are concerned about, and the loss of your potential blockage for any contaminant spill on 95, both of those realities
But what
would
I'm
be
just,
altered.
but
I'm
one
just
way or
pointing
the
that
other,
out.
the outcomes would be the same.
Yeah.
I guess what it amounts to, we had a pretty good deal when you were here the last time. What were we up around? 75%?
Well, there's-
Participation in the
there's a-
cost?
Yeah, I think that's what we matched with the town, was roughly 75%, and we actually, last time I was here, we had an opportunity for additional funding for the town.
And what was the cost of dam removal then?
To be honest, I probably just looked at it, I don't
Partial.
remember.
It's right, it's right in your book, yeah.
Was it 700,000?
Partial.
No.
No.
No,
No.
it was 680, 670 something for replacing your dam. It was 340 for a full removal, which included the earthen portion of the dam, and 275,000 to simply take out the small portion of the earthen dam, and then the actual spillway itself. So it was.
And where do we stand now for funding?
There's nothing, because the town hasn't asked for anything.
No, but I mean, what would the
For
reality?
opportunity,
what-
for
Well,
potential
no,
opportunity.
you
Well,
know,
actually,
you know
for
what's
example,
out there.
Jeff, you're working on the Great Marsh.
Yep.
The biggest opportunity for funding that has ever existed on the East Coast just came and went. $100 million. It was paying 75% of projects. This would have highly prioritized. There's an example. There's a lot of funding out there that, and that's the federal piece. There's also state money that could have been brought into that as well, that could have reduced your share. I usually tell people at the municipal level, I've seen everything from 50% at the local level to 5%, depending on the circumstances. I mean, sometimes just say, we're paying for it.
Well, to put it in perspective then, so that we get a little bit better feel, Ben, what it, you know, kind of, once again, the partial removal was how much?
As Eric mentioned, these figures are dated now, but it was
okay.
275
A partial removal.
for partial. So that's the spillway and a small section of the earthen.
Basically, it's full removal. Some of this leftovers on the sides, but that was the removal.
All right, so you got a couple hundred, you
It
got a,
didn't matter in the height, H and H.
you got a couple $100,000, and it's probably something that would be, we'd have exposure to maybe half of that now.
That would, from my experience, that is your high end, without a doubt.
So that gives, you know, folks a little bit of an understanding, and what would cost a repair of fish ladder be to a tertiary engineering, cost of which would meet basic standards? I don't mean full removal of the fish ladder, I mean.
No,
we
yeah,
can
I mean,
repair
a
it.
full
We've
rebuild.
repaired it for years.
Yeah, you can repair it. It may not pass fish, in which case we'll work with you to improve that, but in the end, it is the responsibility of the town to provide fish
Well, I
passage
think-
to
I
that
think-
site.
I think
But no,
what-
I know what you're saying.
I think what happens is, if we repair a fish passage,
Yeah.
and we repair it for a moderate cost, or to a cost that is something that we can understand.
Yep.
And when you have real scientific information, because we're starting to really be able to gather that in maybe 3 subsequent years, and it becomes the problem, the removal problem, I mean, that everything stops there, I mean, the politics has gotta go away. Because then, to me, if it's not working, you probably gotta take the dam out.
And probably,
One solution here, Jeff, might be that we have we have the United States Fish and Wildlife Service under contract for a certain number of hours and projects a year. We have them booked for 2014, but for 2015, we're willing to use some of our contracted time with them to look at this fishway and do some initial engineering on it. I think what would be a great consideration on the town's part would be to explore looking at grants again for dam removal, because as Eric mentioned, if we had come to that conclusion at this meeting last year, you guys would have a proposal in with a situation where you might have been paying back at that 75, or you might have been looking at 75 or 80% cost coming off the table rather than a best case scenario of 50. You know, so we don't know when that opportunity will come again, but if the towns, I did mention to some people in town administration about this opportunity, if you guys could mobilize quickly. I brought this up in December. And so I would like it if the town would consider moving towards a scenario where you're looking actively at grant opportunities to remove the dam, so that if an opportunity does arise, you can take advantage of it instead of missing out as we kind of did on this last round.
Just from a financial point of view, so what I'm hearing is that for dam replacement, which we would have to do to get fish passage working in the long term, we're talking roughly $500,000 in this old study, right?
More,
$750,000.
on your own dime.
Right, and it's all the taxpayers' money, where with the so-called partial removal option, which I know that dam very well because I live just downstream, would be, most people would consider that the whole dam, as you pointed out. So that was what, 200,000 or something, and then even if we're not horribly optimistic, I really like that 5% number, by the way, but let's say we have to pay a quarter of that, so we're down to 50,000, so we're looking at 50,000, so strictly from the financial side, we're looking at probably on the order of 50,000 versus 750,000 of taxpayer money or other town funds, and just from a financial point of view, it sounds pretty good to me.
You know, to even hire an engineer, because the fish ladder at this point is not really serviceable. My guess is anyone that's gonna look at that is, even if you tried to Band-Aid it short term, a contract for mortar and stone people to come in there and design, get your permits, you're probably well over 50,000 to fix your fish ladder. Easily. I mean, to do that on your own, that's, I mean, fish ladders aren't cheap to build. I mean, these guys, their crew does it on an intermittent basis, but if the town really wants this dam, I always tell that to towns, if you really want your dam, great, take care of it, fix it, and use that impoundment however you, I'll be honest with you, I don't see anyone using this impoundment for much of anything, compared to a lot of them. I mean, we've never seen anybody doing anything in it. But if you want it, that is absolutely your prerogative. I'm not here to say you shall remove your dam. Just the feasibility study says, why keep it? Financially or liability-wise.
Yes.
Yes,
Mike?
Yes, George Comiskey, Park River Clean Water Association. I'd just like to point out, as far as the funding aspect, the Park River provided about $15,000 worth of matching funding, and that we'd be willing to work with every effort which involves a lot of monitoring that can help with the grants funding if you go this route.
And that's actually your share of cash, is in kind, counts.
David?
David Powell on 48 Orchard Street. I am pretty disappointed to see where we are tonight. We shouldn't be here. We should have made this decision 2 years ago, 12 months ago. And it should have been to take the dam down. And let me try and explain briefly why I believe that. David Mountain has just set out the potential economics very clearly, okay? And what I find interesting is our dollars are paying for these gentlemen's services, all of our dollars, okay? And the advice that they are giving us is as clear as you could ask for. And Jeff is talking about some sort of political issue. Jeff, it's not a political issue unless you make it one. I don't mean you personally,
Thank you
but
for
unless, right?
clarification. I feel a lot better, David. Thank you.
Good.
Sorry.
Mocking doesn't help.
David, just
It
don't
really
start.
doesn't.
Don't start. Don't start.
Well, it doesn't, does it? Does it?
Just what I said, don't start.
Good.
Just continue.
Okay. So, given that we've had a very comprehensive study, further studies of what's happening on the river, and we have a couple of possibles. The boom idea, which clearly doesn't hold water, make a bad pun, and the whole issue, quite specious, raised about water quality if the dam is done away with. Now, if you know the depths of the wells that serve the Byfield Water Department, you know that we're dealing with groundwater in that case, and if you're dealing with the dam, you're dealing with largely surface water. And as Eric said, the study of what's in the impoundment doesn't indicate that there's anything there that's lethal or in any way really a serious threat to the water system. So what I see is we have a couple of vague ifs as opposed to a very clear statement as to where we will be if the dam fails. Okay? And I really don't understand why two arguments that are in no way countered by any kind of sensible facts, studies, or anything of the sort led us to a situation that we're now in, that we've now missed 2 rounds of funding. And unless what Eric said is absolutely right, based on my experience with the District Planning Commission, if you're not ready and able to show that you want a grant, you're not going to get any money. And the notion of going to this town and asking for $650,000 or whatever the sum is to rebuild that dam is absurd. And you all know that. So please, don't fiddle around with this one. All you're doing is you have to make a decision essentially to make the town prepared to move. And if you don't make that decision, ultimately, it will cost all of us once again more dollars. And I, for one, am tired of, and they'll understand, of paying for these guys' salary, having us pour it down the drain, because that's what we're effectively doing. So think about it, and please vote to do this now.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Pierce from the Byfield Water District. It's our job to have clean water for people in Byfield. We're worried that if you take this dam down, there'll be components in the river that'll come down and pollute the water, and pollute our wells. We're trying to put a new well in now. We have one well down there, an aging well, and we have another well on Forest Street. Doesn't seem like a lot of fish are coming up there right now. We'd rather see the dam fixed to stop any pollutants from coming down the river. We've poked holes all over Byfield trying to find water. We've only had 2 spots that we can get potable water for the town. It's very important, water is very important to us in the water district, and if we pollute it, we'd like to see you fix it in any way. They say there's no contaminants in the river up there, but there's no problems now. We don't have any problems right now. We don't want any problems. If you take the dam down and it's a problem, you're gonna have to do something for us, and we can't find any potable water in the town. We looked everywhere. Hundreds and hundreds of holes from Lane and New England have punched holes in the town trying to find clean water, gravel-packed wells. I understand Mr. Powell's thing, that he says that there's no contamination to our artesian wells that we have there, but one is contaminated now. And we don't want any problems, and we don't have any problems. And if you take the dam down, it's gonna be somebody else's problem but ours, because we're only gonna have one well then, and then we won't have enough water. And the water, potable water for the town, for our section in Byfield is very important. I believe more than the fish, so that's what. Okay.
Bill, I have a question for you. As you know, the Byfield Water District does not serve the majority of residents in town. And so basically the water...
Major schools in town.
Again, I know the numbers, okay, I live in Byfield,
50
okay.
customers, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, but, you know, to go to town meeting and ask for a very large sum of money at taxpayers' expense, when the majority of voters not that it's a vast majority, but significant majority, do not benefit from biofield water. Would the water district be willing to buy the dam from the
I
town?
didn't see any problem in that when they wanted sewer and water down Plum Island. I stood up and,
But you didn't pay for it.
well, I stood up and voted for it and
Yeah.
supported it and took the loan out in the town.
Yeah, but you didn't pay for it, the folks on Plum Island did.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is that if the water district doesn't trust the engineering study or have information that wasn't available to the engineers that did that study, then it seems to me the logical solution would be for the water district to buy the dam from the town, do whatever they feel is appropriate, given the legal responsibilities that any dam owner has, to, satisfy the board's concerns about water quality.
Well, that's your opinion, but Ben Pearson, the town of Newbury sued Ben Pearson for the land. They paid his lawyers and paid $75,000 for the land at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the responsibility over. The dam is your responsibility, the town of Newbury's.
That's correct. But from the town fiscal point of view, the financial argument towards breaching the dam is pretty strong. And so we're being asked to weigh that sort of financial deal versus the concerns.
We say go right ahead, but if you pollute our wells, we'd like you to get us a new well. So
Well, I
you
think,
have your decision to make.
Well, as I said, wouldn't the water district like to own that dam since they're the ones that are concerned about?
Your dam's not ours, and you took it originally to support.
But I could
clean
sell it to
water.
somebody else too. I could sell it to trustees of reservations.
Yeah.
Again, selling of town property has to go to
Well,
town
if
meeting.
it's not water, should have sold it a long time ago or something.
Mhm.
Done something else
Or I
with it.
could sell it to my good friend David Powell for that
Yeah.
matter, if the town meeting approved it. I don't think he wants it, but that's
We're
the kind
talking
of
about
thing.
selling it. Would Mass Fish and Game like to buy it? I don't know, I'm throwing it up.
No, we don't buy dams.
Okay.
I will take the opportunity on a technical note.
To buy the property out there.
No,
Yeah.
no, personally, I'm not interested in that. On the technical side, though, not all feasibility studies turn out like this, where you have testing of sediments and they say, all right, everything's clear, we don't have to, the sediment can mobilize on its own. In New England, it's very common to have a feasibility study come back and say, you need to dredge this soil. What I would say, propose just as a technical possibility, is if it's such a concern for the Board of Selectmen, you can authorize a small amount of money to be paid to do additional sediment sampling. And if that raises so much concern, you end up with a feasibility analysis that says, yes, dam removal is an option, it's gonna increase costs, but you end up dredging all those materials out from behind the dam. That's a common practice, it happens. In the case of your dam, they said that, using best management practices is what's always done in one of these feasibility studies. You don't need to do that, it's a big cost saver. There's a lot of dam feasibility studies that do suggest that when the sediments come back. But this is not such a case, but if it's such a large concern for the town, for the Board of Selectmen, that's something you can look at, is increased testing to assure everybody in town that you don't need to dredge materials. If that testing says, hey, we do need to dredge those materials, then that gets added to a new feasibility analysis. It ups the cost, but again, there's cost sharing there. So I mean that purely technically,
Yeah.
that it's not a roadblock to examining dam removal.
One observation, it's not a loaded observation, it's pure in spirit. I think Paul Colby's gonna speak, and Paul is pretty sharp on what he does, and I'm waiting to hear him too. But, one of the issues that was relevant and pertinent to this situation was the fact that, it was a good place for deployment of the booms. Some of those booms, Peter Fippen and I were able to get for the fire departments throughout this area. And a lot of it was for a situation such as that, and it was also for coastal deployment. And one of the concerns was that speed of water negated their value. So I think what we're getting down to now with my next statement is we're gonna pare down the issues that are really relevant. Meaning that if we had a spill and it was slack water, you could easily deploy at the bridge just as easily as you would try to deploy behind the dam. If you had spring waters, probably wouldn't work either place. So the idea that, unless you can dispute me, Billy, and I'm okay with that, but the idea of the protection that the dam offered, I don't know if I ever really seriously bought into that. But the idea that when it was an ultimatum that when the dam was removed, we could have damage to the wells was a concern I had. And I'm gonna go on record saying that. Paul, are you gonna speak tonight?
Well, if
I mean,
I
maybe,
guess, I'm Paul Colby, I'm the director of the Byfield Water District. This is going to our third year of actually trying to put a new source online down at the Locker Room well site. Down there currently, there are 3 wells. There's a gravel pack well that was put in the 70s that we're currently using for water. In the 80s, they put in a well about 100 yards away from it, which is closer to the Parker River, that has been shut down because of contamination from the Parker River. Microbials are actually feeding into it. Now, microbials travel very well through dirt, but they travel easily through broken rock or ledge, which is the reason why we think that that well got contaminated. So that well is just an emergency source. And about 150 feet away now, we're putting in a 3rd well, which is the one we're working on for the past 3 years. And so we have done water quality testing from that well, and that's been fine. But we really hate to change anything that's taking place in the Parker River for fear. Bacteria, the microbials aren't making it to this well, but chemical contamination travels much further in the ground. And these wells, though they're not artesian, these wells are only 50 feet deep, so they're relatively shallow wells. They're not like our forestry well, which is deep. So our thought is that we're spending a lot of work and a lot of money and a lot of time to put in a new groundwater source, which honestly, if this source fails, there's really no place for us to look. I mean, without spending $1 million or so, a lot of money to try researching water again. So I guess, speaking for the board, they've said in the past that they didn't favor the removal of this dam for the fear of what is in the sediment or what could happen. And I guess honestly, we're so close to getting this well put online that we prefer not to take any chances.
but I mean, to go back and kind of redefine our statements again. Boom deployment, probably, Billy, would be just as easy, depending on the conditions and the speed of the river in either location. So that's really not our issue, and that's what we used to think is our issue, our public thought was our issue. Some of the concerns would be, if there is those issues, Ben and Eric, would be that during the process of removal of the dams, that we could injure the new wells. So I think, when you start to think of it this way, I think maybe for the folks out there too, especially Parker Clean Water, that likes clean water and things, so maybe the next step is to start to, I think we've taken a lot of the vectors out of this. And, David Powell and I think Eric said, I'm not particularly a great guy on dams, because working like I do on the Great Marsh, dams don't have a benefit for the Great Marsh. But when you hear about protecting our water supplies for a third or more of the town, those are some of the things that we need to try to go a little more, maybe more studies, which you hate to even think of. I don't know. Yeah, Dougie.
If we don't spend $750,000 to repair this dam, all these bad things that you're talking about, they're all gonna happen anyways. The dam's gonna fail, and they're all gonna happen. You're not gonna have any contingency plans in place, and you're not gonna have any money, you're not gonna have any engineering help to deal with it. So then what do? Now we're in this spot now, and we haven't got anybody. And as far as your boom deployment goes, we looked at that. I mean, there were 5 things that we identified that were problems. We have a drop up at the USGS. We have some scour at the 95. We're gonna have a dog leg that we're gonna have to address. If we only do a partial removal and we leave some of that earthen dam in, that river wants to go straight. It doesn't want a dog leg left like it is now, so there may be an issue there. We have the sediment that baseline's the same downriver as it does in the impoundment. So the sediment contamination, the levels of materials in the sediment are no different than what's in the river right now. Right now you have a situation where your sediment's washing right over the top of that dam because it's impounded all the way to the top. So all these issues are present.
Eric, yeah.
Yeah, Eric Hutchins, one of the issues brought up about contamination, we attempted to bring up before the Board of Selectmen, and we did evaluate that as well, recognizing that as your water commissioners brought up, that biological components are the major issue, which is bacterial. The impoundment behind Larkin Dam actually does the reverse of the dam. I mean, of the wells. The well fields actually have a zone of withdrawal. They draw water from the surrounding areas. Dams actually hold water back and actually push it into the ground. Having the dam in place allows for a very shallow water body throughout the summer with lots of organic sediments which grow the very bacteria and organic type materials that have actually contaminated your old dam. A free-flowing river, oxygen levels go way up, and you actually have much cleaner water. Holding this dam in place is actually promoting biological activity of non-natural type that you want in a river. And since the dam is actually above your well field, if you have a real significant drought in the summertime, that water cooks, and it's not even moving. It actually has the ability to be drawn into your wells more than letting it flow out. So we did bring these up before, things to certainly think about. We brought these up, and certainly things to think about. Because we're not finding a inorganic contaminant issue of significance, and we're certainly hearing, and by all means, your water should be your number one issue. I'm not disagreeing with that. If this is a real threat, and someone has some documentation to that, rebuild your dam. It's pure, I mean, I agree with you. But from what we've gathered, what we're hearing is biological activity. Organic material behind the dam promotes the growth of bacteria and organic activity. That sounds like it's your threat. That's all.
So the other two dams are gonna be doing, other four dams gonna be doing the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
they're not good
Okay.
either.
Yeah,
They're not
All right.
good.
Chuck, I would suggest.
When are you gonna come back to take down the next dam, after we do this?
I'm not coming back to tear your dam down. This was a feasibility study actually done by
Okay.
you when you had a failing dam. It was supported you when you asked for funding.
If the
and
dam
assistance.
failed,
Yeah.
okay, my opinion is, if you walk out there around there, isn't it gonna be kinda like a tree falling down in the woods? Okay, the next morning, no one's gonna even know downstream that the dam failed.
I doubt that.
You think so?
Joe, I'm
We got
downstream.
4
I
feet
think
of
I
water,
noticed.
and how many acres are backed up there? Not that big an area.
Yeah, we estimated about 1,000 cubic yards of sediment behind the dam. If it's done on a controlled breach, a lot of it would stabilize and become revegetated.
Yeah.
A quote catastrophic, which is when it's done uncontrolled, usually happens in a large rain event. And all that material would potentially go downstream instantaneously. I mean, I can't predict what's in it and exactly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Ben, you got anything to add?
No, I think.
We
you guys
kicked
have-
it to death.
What?
We kicked
Yeah,
it
I
to
think
death.
I think you've done a pretty good job of kicking the horse. I would say that I scientifically, I truly believe that anadromous fish runs are incredibly important to the health of the Great Marsh. Eric kind of outlined that earlier, that these runs are vital parts of this marsh. If you ask me my professional opinion, the Great Marsh is the only thing sustaining this run right now. I think that however many fish we count going over that dam, there's probably an extra 5,000 to 10,000 fish that hit the base and never make it up. And there's a limited success of spawning there. And the productivity in the Great Marsh is the only thing keeping this run going. Fish aren't making it to Pentucket Pond. you talked about why is this happening now. I go back in the files that DMF has for the past 30 years, and I look, and there's repairs that noted needing to be done in the mid-90s. They didn't get done until I was hired last year, 2 years ago. So I think that degradation of your fishways, additional pressures from beavers, clogging those fishways and creating other passage barriers throughout the run, you have a lot of different things that are hurting this run. And one by one, we need to chip at them. That's what I'm here for. And I'm here because one of these things we need to chip away with is the Larkin Dam. So I think that's all I'd say in conclusion. I think that there's a lot of good reasons to look at further data if you need to, but I just haven't, I think that the data that exists supports removing it. We're happy to help you, as I said, in not this year, but next year we can start working towards some engineering plans. But we do believe that dam removal is a pretty good option for the town financially and for the fish run. So, if you guys have any more questions, I'm happy to answer, but I think.
Molly?
Molly.
Marlene Schrader, One Anchor Way, Newbury, also a director on the Parker River Clean Water Association. I would start out by saying that the mission statement, which appears almost every time we send something out, says that the Parker River Clean Water Association is dedicated to the restoration and protection of the Parker River and its watershed. So certainly that's always foremost in our mind, and water quality is right up there. I want to point out a couple of things, especially to the people who are there. The engineering report, which was contracted by a third-party engineer, if I refer to that, they're an engineering party. They don't owe anything to the town or whatever. They say it like it is. It's a very, very complete document. It is online, and it can be read. And I often think that many people who have concerns may not have actually read the document and seen what the depth of the studies that were done. They were very carefully done. I'm aware of the fact that many dams across the state have been studied, and I have been told that this study was done more in depth than just about any other dam study in the state. It was a very thorough, above and beyond. So at least we should look carefully at that data. The other thing I wanted to say was, I've seen a lot of flooding pictures. I own a lot of flooding pictures. Our chairperson here of the Concom has said it's not a matter of if, it's when. It is going to happen. I've seen these flooding pictures that are massive out there. It's going to take that dam one way or the other. And we either do it ourselves in a well-prepared, controlled manner where we have some financial assistance, or we let it all go crumble. And we know even if we were concerned about the sediment, although the study says the sediment is not bad, and you can take sediment out. It's done quite frequently. So I'm not sure that we really do have the problems that many people may be worrying about. I don't think they're insurmountable. We certainly should be able to reassure the Byfield water people and accomplish this at the same time in an orderly way. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
I have to say, a little new wrinkle for me, and Marlene spoke well to it, and Doug probably a little more resounding to it, and you mentioned something that was, to me, and maybe it was my problem that I didn't read deeply enough, Eric, into the study, but the idea of a controlled removal is somewhat new to me somehow. Meaning a controlled removal is what Ben just spoke about, where you begin to, I always thought the dam came out and the dam came out. So a controlled removal is done in such a way, I mean, you begin to now get to the nitty-gritty. Especially if some problems there are inevitable anyway. I mean, we still have concerns of the Byfield water, but a partial removal is gonna be done in such a way that the sediment, or any sediment, and yet the sediment is probably pretty clean anyway, but the sediment stays in place and revegetates.
You can, they can do it in ways that will minimize sediment mobilization. You're gonna have sediment movement unless if you identify sediments you absolutely want removed, then you pay to have them dredged out. But there is going to be more, as Eric was pointing out, there will be more sediments mobilized if you have a dam failure, because it's not gonna happen in the middle of August.
So you have control.
On a nice sunny day, it's gonna happen in March when you have a big storm, and everything's gonna flush right through. You know, these dam removals, as he's talking about, controlled dam removal take place over a good number of days, and where they chip away, use heavy equipment to move parts of that dam, and they do it in a way that's gonna mobilize less sediment. So some of that sediment that in a complete failure that would probably mobilize, won't mobilize. It'll end up, as you suggest, revegetating over time. And then if, like I said, if the concerns are so great, you can invest in doing some more sediment testing for several $1,000s and
Well, I mean, if you,
We've already tested it to death, I think, you know.
well, correct, but
I think we're going to the assumption that it's clean.
okay, I wasn't, it seemed like that maybe that wasn't the case. But
No, I mean,
Yeah.
Eric, are we making the assumption that it's clean?
There's relatively low levels of stuff compared to so many dams I'm working on. There's nothing in the level of any significant human health risk.
Yeah,
And the data is in the reports.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's an impoundment that exists,
it's no-
or any waterway. Even the water you're drinking, you know, the Parker River probably has more contamination coming in the actual flow than is in, unfortunately, just from septic systems and all the runoff from cars and stuff upstream on an everyday basis is cumulatively probably hundreds of times more contamination
Yeah.
threat than what is in the dam. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to say that, but our pollution's ubiquitous. But there's no hot spot here. That's the clear thing, the good thing. No, and certainly because of a water supply issue, every effort should be taken.
Just a couple comments and then a sort of a summary of where I think we are. One comment addresses the sediments, and as some people in this audience know, I wrote a little history about the mills of the Parker River, and since I lived just downriver from the Larkin Mill, that was one of my favorite mills to study. And many cases where we see serious problems with the sediments, it's because of the type of industrial activity that was associated with that well. Here we have a well that started out as a sawmill and then became a soft mill. And so the types of materials that were being used in that processing were not real bad. If they'd been making felt hats back then with mercury and stuff, I'd be really worried, or some of these other kinds of industrial uses that we see at other dams. So just a little historical reason why I think the sediments are as good as they are. Just to follow up on a comment that Paul Caldy made, and it's been a source of frustration for me. Paul and I and a number of other people formed, I forgot what we called ourselves, but it was sort of a study committee to look for alternative sources of water throughout Newbury. And this is back when we were talking about the Plum Island Sewer and Water Project and whether we had any viable sources of water in Newbury that could help support that project. And the frustration that I came away with from that study was that there were potential sites, but in so many cases we'd built houses on top of them. And so as a result, you know, we came to the conclusion there were very few options in the town of Newbury. In fact, probably the only really potentially viable option would be the old well off Parker Street. But that was not used because of the mineral content, and if it could supply enough water, it might justify the cost of a treatment plant. But this is the kind of problem we run into with public water supplies, and as I say, it's a great source of frustration. Just to kind of summarize where I think we are, we've got 4 choices, and they're pretty clear. There's a do-nothing choice, which means we don't spend any money in the immediate future, but the do-nothing choice eventually has a cost because of the likelihood of a dam failure sometime in the future. We don't know if it's next year or 5 or 10 years down the road. And then we have the replacement option. We can't really call it repair anymore because it sounds like it's in such bad shape we got to start from ground zero and build up. And then we have various combinations of breaching, dam removal, whatever we want to call them. And so I think really that's where we are. And again, anything that costs money has got to get approved by town meeting. And so, but as selectmen, you know, I suppose we do have the do nothing option. We could just choose not to bring anything to town meeting, although any 10 citizens could petition to put something on the warrant. And so at the end of the day, if we're going to take any action other than the do nothing action, it's going to have to go to all the voters that show up for town meeting. So I think that's kind of what we're at right now. So as a board, you know, we can be the enablers for any one of 3 options, and we could, I guess, essentially unilaterally take the do nothing option.
And I gotta add to that, whether it be Ben or Eric was chipper today, but the presentation was somewhat more illuminating tonight than when you guys were here last time. And it's on television. So, you know, it kind of brings forth, you know, some of the dilemmas that are in place, and it also certainly highlights the fact, you know, when you talk about a partial removal, a controlled removal, I mean, it starts to, it's a broader based understanding, I think, for our community after tonight.
And also, I want to congratulate the Parker River Clean Water Association. In full disclosure, I'm also a board member, but I always abstained from any vote that would be potentially a conflict between my role as a selectman and a board member of the Clean Water Association. But I think it's very fortunate that Ben was invited to be the speaker at the annual meeting, because it's an opportunity for people to learn more about the biological issues that he expressed concern about. So I thank my fellow board members for choosing him as this year's speaker.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Tim Perry. Oh, you have,
You couldn't make it tonight, and the representative of the board.
okay. You could come up to the microphone just so people can hear.
Janice Irving, 7 Middle Road, representative.
Wait a second. Folks, could you quiet down, please?
People, there's other business going on.
Janice Irving, 7 Middle Road. I'm a representative of the Byfield Newbury Little League Board. And we're looking to use the upper green for our games and practices
Oh, okay.
in
And-
the past.
And have you got dates here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And Kathy, we're all set as far as no conflicts, right? Because they're first, I guess.
I told them I would advise them if we had approved something
Okay.
prior or something really important came up that the green was needed.
yes.
And they're willing, they're flexible.
Blackout
Yeah.
dates, if we could have those, we would definitely.
I think the flexibility is key because you may have to move around because when we get a lot of rains, it gets pretty muddy out there. And, you know, so they were good, so,
Okay. Motion to approve.
okay. Second, any other questions?
I just want to say, I think I strongly support it, because when my kids were younger, I began to appreciate how hard it is to find playing fields
Yeah,
for the Little League at almost any age.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
we have yet to solve that problem, so any use that the Little League can make of the
Yeah.
green, I think, is great, and I strongly
All in
support
favor?
it.
Aye. Thank you for all your work you put into that.
Blackout dates from you, or?
From Kathy.
Yeah.
Would you give me,
Oh, your dates.
a list of dates that you're looking at, just, you know, so that we have something to work off of, and I'll look at the calendar and let you
All
know
right,
which
I would
ones.
buy that.
Thank you.
All right, updated plans for Byfield Day celebration, June 27th and 28th. Heidi, not here. Linda, Steve, Linda. Whoever's closer to the aisle, yeah. Oh.
sitting way too long. I don't like it in my face. Linda Allen, Central Street, Byfield. I'm one of the managers of the Byfield Community Arts Center. How can I help you?
Well, you're gonna give us an update of the plans for the,
Well, we're in the process of finding musical groups, and what we'd like to do is convert Byfield Day to a family-oriented art and music festival at Mantor Field. We do have permission from the Recreation Committee to use the field, but it's all in the planning stages because without you guys saying, yes, we can do it, we don't want to go and make any specific commitments to anyone.
Well, I gotta admit, it makes sense. We're losing more and more ground in the middle of, we've lost the fire station, we've lost the little school. You know, we're left with, kinda cramped
Yeah.
in, so
We're-
it makes sense.
We're planning to do the car show on Friday night, as usual. And so we'll have to come to you once we get it all planned. We'll come to you and ask to close the road so that the people and the kids will be safe. And then we'll have more in-depth plans. If we get approval tonight, we'll come back to you with exactly what we want to do.
So you want tentative approval for the
For the use of the
Mantor
field.
Field?
Yep. We've found that Byfield Day has kind of been dying over the last few years, and we think this would be a much more successful place where people can come and bring their whole family, have food, listen to music. We're hoping to have, one thing that Triton is going to have their art department have some of the kids making pottery this fourth term, and they're going to come with a table and sell the pottery that they make.
Okay.
Which will benefit the community arts center.
Yes, which will benefit the Community Arts Center. So we've got a lot of people,
okay, and this, right now is in no conflict with anything the rec committee has,
nothing.
okay. So, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I move that we give tentative approval, but I would suggest that you work with Tracy and Kathy, because when we've had other festival-like activities there, there's sort of a standard set of stuff that we look for before we give final approval, you know, sort of working with the police department and all that
Oh,
kind of stuff.
we've
So-
already, oh yeah, insurance, we've already got those feelers out there, but until we got approval
Right.
from rec and from you.
So anyway,
we
that's why
can't
I'm
really
moving sort of tentative
secure
approval
anything.
pending, you know, more detailed plans and so forth, so.
Second the motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right,
Next page.
request for use of the Upper Green Saturday, July 26th for an old-fashioned fireman's muster,
All right.
okay? This is typical of, we've done every year, right?
Yes, I think it's during the homecoming week.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's right, they,
Right, the last weekend.
yep. Yeah,
Okay.
So who gets precedent, the muster or the Little League?
The league is finished by then.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, great.
Motion to approve.
any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
One-day liquor license for the Anna Jakes Hospital Aid Association for the Great Chef's Night at Governor's Academy, March 21st, from 5:30 to 10:30 PM. I believe this is an annual thing,
It is.
okay?
Right.
It's a fundraiser for the Anna Jakes Hospital activities up there.
Motion to approve.
Any other questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, business license renewal, Internet Cars Unlimited at 88 Newburyport Turnpike. This is a renewal they've been doing out there in business for a year or two, I think. It's
I think this is maybe their third year.
third year, time flies. Okay.
That's been 3 years? Holy mackerel. All right.
All in favor?
Oh,
mean,
mo- Motion to approve, yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The minutes of the 128 meeting, this was the stuff that, the same thing you sent through to us. All right, was it on, did you get it on the Dropbox or the email? I got it.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Kathy, is this
Did
the
you
one
get
we
to
sign
review
here,
it on
or have
the-
you got the
On
one
the email thing, though, it was.
to sign for the license
my
approval?
email.
Yeah, I think,
I have
Yeah.
it.
Oh, all right, never mind, Joe.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
False alarm.
Motion on the minutes
Oh,
To accept.
to approve, yep.
yeah,
Okay, second,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have here, communications and the Senate Bill 1909 enacted as Chapter 19 of the Acts of 2014, effective January 30th. What this was, I went over it this afternoon too. It was the,
The Plum Island.
oh, Plum Island, the assessors are bound by Mass General Law that they have to, people have to pay taxes on whatever was on the books January 1st. And when people lose their house through erosion, that type of stuff, storms, they still have to pay taxes on something that's not there. And so this went to a special act of the legislature, and they said they can give relief to these people that lost their homes on Plum Island last year. That's what it's about. So anyway, it's gone through. We have a notice from Congressman Tierney regarding a meeting on Thursday of this week at 3 PM at the Ipswich Town Hall regarding the impact of FEMA flood maps and insurance program on our property owners. And this is based on a situation in Rockport where they found a flaw in the way that the FEMA methodology. And I encourage people to go. I believe Doug's gonna try and go. You gonna go, Martha? It's not that important, because I've talked to Doug about it, and one thing I'd like to see brought up, it's not necessarily the impact of the FEMA maps, but maybe some sort of relief where they can phase in the insurance rates, and this would be a good place to send it. The insurance rates are gonna go up a great deal, and it's kind of a hardship on people that build homes in accordance with the flood maps, and then a year or 2 years later, find out that their insurance is gonna skyrocket. And it would be seem to be a reasonable venue to try and get FEMA to phase these in. Because, you know, a lot of people, and it's not, you know, we immediately think of the erosion of Plum Island and everything, but all over the town and all over the county, built according to the FEMA regulations, and then all of a sudden, they come in with new maps, and immediately they're hit with a big increase, so it's a chance for some of that. I've talked to Doug about that. And so anyway, it's a notice to everyone that's out there watching television that they can have this hearing at 3 PM at the Ipswich Town Hall, and encourage people that are affected and people that are interested to go to it.
And Tierney's reps from his office asked if any of the selectmen are planning to
Yeah.
go. If you call that number on the letter, just so
Okay.
that they can recognize.
Yeah, Liz, okay, all right.
You let them know. They recognize you as a board member.
It's Thursday afternoon, okay. You're signing warrants, good job. We have an executive session scheduled.
Actually, if we could postpone that to the next meeting, I haven't received the
Okay.
executed document.
All right.
Oh,
So in
thank
other
you.
words, we
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you.
can adjourn.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Just before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that it's my understanding the planning board is going to be holding, I don't know if you call it a workshop on the demolition delay bylaw,
We're not.
or who,
The
the historical
Historical
commission.
Commission.
Okay.
Historic Commission,
All right,
yes.
but, and that's tomorrow evening, I believe? Is that tomorrow evening?
Tomorrow evening, I think it's 6:30 here.
Okay, because I think, you know, this is something I think a lot of folks in town will have opinions about one way or the other, so. it'd be-
There's also a fairly important school committee meeting tomorrow night. Okay, because we're getting closer and closer to budget time, so, reminder.
Ah,
All right, motion to adjourn,
motion to adjourn.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.